These companies ran an experiment. Pay workers their full day salary to work fewer days. Companies in the United Kingdom are about to complete the biggest trial of a 4-day work week ever undertaken anywhere in the world. This program's thesis was a provocative one. That for 6 months, these companies would reduce their workers' hours by 20% to 32 hours a week, but continue to pay them 100% of their pay. Charlotte Lockhart, the founder of the 4-Day Week, the organization behind the pilot program, says company leaders usually have a visceral reaction when they hear the idea of cutting hours without cutting pay. Something like, that'll never work in my business, that'll never work in my industry, that'll never work in my country, that'll never work in the world. Wonder why. Fortunately, she found 73 companies to give it a shot. They include financial firms, recruiters, consultants, healthcare companies, and even a fish and chip shop. This is Britain after all. And while the data on the study hasn't been released yet, the anecdotal feedback from these firms appears to be positive. Fully 86% said they will likely continue the 4-day workweek policy. The same pay for less time at work. Sign us up. This is closer to socialism. That is closer to socialism, even though it's obviously not being done at the behest of like workers getting together and being able to seize the means of production. But the impact of that is closer. Like the outcome of that is closer to fucking socialism than like anything else. Way closer to socialism than the guy, the CEO guy who's like, I'm going to give everybody 70 grand or some shit. Okay. What is this? Humane Corps like Unilever are 100% behind that. People hum. What the fuck is this? The cons of a 4-day work week. 4-day work week is a system of working where employees or students have their shifts over 4 days rather than the usual 5. These are extremely well. They are extremely wealthy as a consequence of running their businesses, but in their business, a bunch of normal men and women who don't inspire. Wait, what? Not to play corporate shill, but there's so much corporate interplay and dependency that it's usually very difficult to make large-scale changes because you need everyone up and down the industry chain on board. Can't be just one company doing it. Anyway, I work 36 hours a week to get paid for 40, and I will not work 4 days a week. It is so nice. I'm on such a grind that I ask to work 6 days a week and receive 32 hours of pay that week because I'm built different. I mean, at the heart of capitalism lies a contradiction, okay? A contradiction in the interests of those who are wage laborers, i.e. the working class, against the interests of managers and bosses, or managers working at the behest of bosses, i.e. capital owners, i.e. the bourgeoisie, okay? Now, the contradiction is simple. And any of you that have ever worked a job knows this already. You have literally lived it. You're probably living it right now. What is that? You as a worker want to work the least amount of hours for the most amount of pay. That's just normal, right? You want that. That's a totally normal thing to want. And your bosses want you to work the most amount of hours that they can make you work for the least amount of pay that they can get away with. Now, unfortunately, this is the simplest way to describe it. It's the simplest way to describe capitalism, okay? And yet, because the bosses, the capital owners, are able to basically pay you whatever they fucking wish to pay you as a consequence of market conditions, and that always means that they will underpay you. They will underpay you in the form of profits. They will take more from you working at that company so they can line up their own profits and line up the pockets of their shareholders, okay? You don't really get to have a say in this circumstance. So less hours for the same amount of pay is unironically something that can be achieved. It might even increase productivity. 20th century milestones on the path of the 40-hour work week. Here in 1914, Henry Ford shifts from the 9-hour to 8-hour days, though employees still work 6 days a week. Congress passes in 1918 the Adamson Act, named after William Adamson, a U.S. representative from Georgia, establishing an 8-hour workday for all interstate rail workers to avoid a strike. Okay? 1924 to 26, Ford moves to a 5-day work week, closing his factories on the weekends. He believed that if workers had more leisure time, they would buy more products, including his cars. While Henry Ford was a fascist and a major anti-Semite and kind of, said shit about the Jews that would make Hitler go, okay, calm down a little bit, okay? You're being very crazy right now. Ultimately, he also recognized alienation. This is to combat alienation. This is to ensure a fundamental principle that Americans have even forgotten about, especially the global market, that like your workers should be able to fucking buy the shit that they're making. Okay? Anyway, in 1938, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signs the Fair Labor Standards Act, which mandates a federal standard for a 44-hour work week. Sounds like communism to me. Okay? And the law also requires a minimum wage and overtime pay for those working more than 44 hours a week. And in 1940, the FLSA is updated to lower the federal standard to 40 hours a week. Reducing working hours is pro-worker. 4 days a week is nothing like that. It's a con. The link I shared shows it. I don't know enough about the 4-day work week and who's advocating for it. But if, Unilever is pushing for it, then it's probably a fucking bullshit. Anytime there is a way to get the same workforce to do more work, capital owners will take it. Okay? Because we do not have a worker-first attitude when it comes to the economy. No one thinks about it from the perspective of, like, how do we make it easier for workers? When we look at technological achievements that make it so that every individual worker can now do the work of 10, okay, we do not see that as a way to reduce the worker's workload and pay them the same amount. We see that as a way to reduce the number of workers because now one guy can do the work of 10. That is at the heart of why people fear automation, why people fear AI. Automation is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But under capitalism, automation just means more displaced workers and less workers doing the job of more workers that used to do it, rather than alleviating some of the fucking stress and the workload. Because profit-driven companies would much rather, make one guy do the job of 10. 7 cons of a 4-day work week. Assume benefits of a 4-day work week may be more fantasy than reality. Wait, what? Morale boosted from the 4-day work week may be short-lived. What is this? This is written like fucking... The article that you sent me literally looks like corporate propaganda, for the record. Like, you just sent me the most, like... You said Unilever is on board with this, and then you literally sent me a corporate propaganda against it. Now, I don't know enough. I'll be honest with you. I don't know enough about who's pushing for the 4-day work week and how the 4-day work week might work. So, for that reason, I'm not going to immediately jump and say this is good. But that website that you linked, stating that it's actually a bad idea, is bad. From the moment the 5-day week was adopted as an industry standard about a century ago, we've been talking about spending less time at work. We already talked about it. John Maynard Keynes declared early in the 1930s that technological advancement would bring the work week down to 15 hours within a century. Yeah, big dub for him, A U.S. Senate subcommittee doubled down on this in 1965, predicting we would only be working 14 hours by the year 2000. It's just so strange that these guys made these predictions, and yet we could do that. They are right. We could do that. That is 100% true. Except, like I said, time and time again, all of that extra productivity was folded into a decreasing workforce rather than making it easier for the pre-existing workforce to do less for the same pay. But over the last few years, the idea of shortening the work week has been given new impetus by the pandemic, which threw workplaces into a state of disarray. That created a unique opening for reformers like Charlotte Lockhart. The opportunity we have here is completely to reframe the workplace. To get companies on board, she's using the holy grail of increased productivity as a lure. That's a particularly tantalizing enticement for companies in the UK where productivity has languished for more than a decade and where she says workers are on average productive for just 3 hours a day. This is true, by the way. That's the other thing. Like, if you've ever worked at unless you're working in an Amazon distribution facility, okay, where there's like something strapped to your goddamn chest that basically fucking counts every second you spend pissing, okay? And every second that you're walking away from the packages to go to the fucking bathroom in this goddamn stadium-sized distribution facility, most people in especially white-collar jobs are working like 1 hour to 2 hours a day maximum, okay? You're maxing out. You can reduce your daily work regimen to like 1 to 2 hours of like super productive work, and then the rest is just like fucking around, watching the Hasanabi broadcast, which there's nothing wrong with, by the way. You should keep doing that. The data produced by these studies tends to be a little squishy. There are not a lot of hard numbers in them that allow readers to gauge productivity gains or losses in material terms. But managers and workers have generally reported being equally or more productive in a shortened week. They reported improved health and perception, general well-being, reduced stress, reduced burnout. One big finding was that people who work fewer hours in a week tend to get more sleep, which almost everyone in the scientific community agrees is key to productivity. Laura Gurge, a professor in behavioral science who studies well-being at Oxford and the London School of Economics, says happier, better rested workers are likely to be more productive and less likely to burn out or churn out. And a shortened week can drive productivity in other ways. It forces people to prioritize better and really focus on completing their core work. She knows that companies often waste resources by keeping employees idle between meetings and tasks. These idle hours not only fragment employees' attention and therefore productivity, but can also cost companies $100 billion in lost wages. They're using capitalism terms to describe that capitalism and endless profit seeking, when profit rates have a tendency to decline, is causing diminishing returns in your workforce because you're just exhausting them to a degree where their output is not going to be the same. A shorter week can also go a long way to dealing with one of the biggest impairments to corporate productivity: employees taking time off to go to the doctor or recover from an illness. Yeah, it's literally killing you. Biggest impairment to corporate productivity, by the way. This line in and of itself is so violent. I see this almost as a recognition from capital owners and those who side with capital owners that the contradictions are making it so that like it's hurting the bottom line. Capitalism is so, capitalists do so much capitalism that it hurts capitalism. Okay? That's the best way to put it. George quotes, research done in the U.S. estimating that 5 to 8% of annual healthcare costs are associated with and may be attributable to workplace stressors such as long hours. That's crazy. Very few people do any work after 5 hours, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, there are also, more physical labor and shit like that requires your constant attention. Obviously, that's different. But this is like, we're talking about, white collar work, not blue collar work for the most part. Anyway, one size doesn't fit all. Her caution was reflected in a small and very random poll conducted by NPR on the streets of London recently. All British workers we spoke to said they liked the idea of more time off, but they all expressed doubts that the 4-day workweek model would fit easily within their sectors because they're cucks. They also raised the question of whether a week with fewer working hours would benefit the kind of workers who make up increasingly large part of the British workforce. You talk about the difference between the knowledge economy and the platform and gig economies, Terry says. Work is precarious, and generally people lack security and are self-employed in most instances. They're tied to a company, but technically work for themselves. Here lies the true problem. The service industry, gig sector, or gig economy jobs are becoming the only jobs that are available. Okay? They're becoming the only fucking growing sector. And that is literally how they mine sulfur. Okay? You go to like the Indonesian sulfur mine, that's the gig economy at play. Okay? They're literally doing that. Capitalism is so good or not so good, but like it's such a fucking unstoppable behemoth that the exploitation, the insane exploitation that you see in the third world, okay, has now been brought back to the United States and Western nations that are supposed to be firmly within the labor aristocracy, okay? They are supposed to be more comfortable workers. Of course, you're against the 4-day work week. You work 7 days a week. I work for myself, though, so it's different. I have so much autonomy. I lack very little alienation from my labor, okay? I get adequately compensated. I have more of a negotiation power as being like one of the top people in the industry that I'm in. Okay? That's the difference. I work for as long as I want, whenever I want. One of the things I think about all the time is the freedom to be able to stop working if I don't want to. Like, that's huge. Okay? Adequately, wouldn't you say you get paid a little too much? Brother, I don't get paid from Amazon. You understand that, right? I get paid by you, and Amazon chooses to take a percentage of that. Like, you are a subscriber, which implies you are giving me the money. You fucking idiot. And it's free, too. It's quite literally free. But because there are so many people that choose to pay, okay, it's just a question, law. I don't complain. No, I mean, you're being snide and misunderstanding the point I'm making and derailing the conversation. But because of the hours that I put in and because of the number of people that watch, I am able to get paid boatloads of money, okay, which also offers me more of a negotiation power when I talk to a company like Amazon. For me, I could literally stop if I wanted to and reduce my hours. And that freedom is what gives me so much mental security and mental health. Like it improves my mental health dramatically, as opposed to not having that freedom, as opposed to never being able to leave and having to fucking go to work every morning at the same time. That's a huge burden lifted from your shoulders. A real pro-worker stance will be reducing working hours on those 5 damn days, not cramming 10 hours per day to shave off 1 day in the name of corporation saving money over it. No, I think that the real pro-worker movement in this circumstance would be a worker-backed movement to, push for legislation that changes dramatically the work week to 8 hours, 4 days a week, rather than 8 hours, 5 days a week. That's it. And then ultimately push it even further and lower it even further. Well, did you just say Twitch improves your mental health? Do you not remember when you got the shingles? Yeah, I mean, yes. I do work. I do things that are not good for my mental health. I'm just saying that the autonomy, even in that circumstance, is what keeps me sane and alive. Okay? If I was being forced by the threat of not being able to have health care anymore to stream these hours, I would have fucking killed myself. Okay? To a certain degree, I choose to stream as much as I do. There isn't some corporate overlord looking over my shoulder saying, like, look, if you don't do this, you're fucked. Yeah, it's better than the alternative. I've gotten shingles from my old job and had zero choice in staying or quitting because I prefer not to be homeless. Exactly. The violence, the structural violence of poverty is what makes people stay in the fucking jobs that they're in. And in a country like America where healthcare is private, okay, in a country where reading script, what? In a country where America where healthcare is also tied to your employment, you have additional stress factors that force you into staying at your place of work no matter how bad things get. And that is by design. That is not an accident. Okay? That is by design. Hi, YouTube. If you're watching this video, please subscribe. Hit that bell and subscribe for all the latest videos. Please do that.